Today, we're jumping into an absolutely incredible story. It's a story about ambition, about unshakable faith, and a miracle that would literally echo through history. So I want you to imagine this: a king marching a massive, seemingly unstoppable army across a brutal desert. But he's not after gold or land. He's there to destroy a single sacred building. 60,000. Just let that number sink in. That was the size of this formidable army marching across the Arabian desert. And every single soldier, every single war animal was there for one reason and one reason only: a singular, destructive purpose. And this was their target, the Kaaba in Mecca, a simple, cube-shaped building that had been revered for centuries. The man leading this massive charge was Abraha, a powerful and ambitious king from Yemen. So what on earth could drive a man to do something like this? Well, let's dive in and find out. So what gets into a king's head to make him march an army of that size with such a specific, and you could say, blasphemous goal? Well, as we're about to see, it was a really dangerous mix of wounded pride, a thirst for power, and maybe even a little bit of religious jealousy. You see, Abraha had built this absolutely magnificent cathedral back in his capital, Sana'a. We're talking a true architectural wonder. But it drove him crazy that all the Arab tribes were still making their pilgrimages to that little stone cube in Mecca instead of his glorious new church. And then came the final straw. A rival tribesman who was loyal to the Kaaba went and deliberately defiled his church. Well, Abraha just exploded. In a fit of pure rage, he swore an oath. He was going to march to Mecca and tear that Kaaba down stone by stone. And believe me, he put together a force to back up that threat. 60,000 men was an almost unimaginable number for that region at the time. And leading the charge was his ultimate weapon, a colossal war elephant named Mahmud. The elephant's entire job was to pull down the walls of the Kaaba. With a force like that, victory didn't just seem likely, it looked like a sure thing. So as Abraha's army gets closer and closer to Mecca, they're just brushing aside any resistance. His troops fan out and they start grabbing whatever they can, including 200 camels that just so happen to belong to the city's leader, a man named Abdul Muttalib. And this little act of theft is about to lead to a confrontation for the ages. All right, so this brings us to our two main players. On one side, you've got Abraha, the conquering king with this overwhelming army ready to flatten the city's most holy site. And on the other side, you have Abdul Muttalib, the respected elder of the Quraysh tribe. Abraha, sitting there on his throne, is fully expecting this old man to come in begging and pleading for the Kaaba's safety. He was in for a huge surprise. When Abraha asks him what he wants, Abdul Muttalib doesn't plead for the city. He doesn't beg for the Kaaba. He just asks for his 200 camels back. Abraha is stunned, almost insulted. He's like, "Are you kidding me? I've come to destroy the very symbol of your faith, and all you care about are your camels?" And this is when Abdul Muttalib delivers this legendary, powerful reply. "I am the owner of the camels. As for the house, it has its own owner who will protect it." So after saying his piece, Abdul Muttalib takes his camels and heads back to Mecca. He knew his people didn't stand a chance, not a hope, against Abraha's army. So he tells everyone to evacuate, to get up into the surrounding mountains for safety. He says one last prayer at the Kaaba, basically handing it over to its true owner, and then he leads his people away, leaving the entire city completely empty. The next morning dawns, and Mecca is eerily empty. Abraha's army gets ready for the final assault. The soldiers are lined up, the stage is set, and right at the front of the formation stands the great war elephant Mahmud, ready to carry out his master's destructive command. The order is given, but then something strange happens. Mahmud, this massive war machine, he just kneels. He refuses to move toward the Kaaba. His handlers are freaking out. They're beating him, trying to force him up, but he won't budge. So they try something. They turn him back toward Yemen. He gets up and walks immediately. They turn him left, he walks. Turn him right, he walks. But every single time they point him back toward Mecca, he just stops cold and kneels. So while the whole army is struggling with this defiant elephant, their attention gets pulled to the horizon. There's this dark speck in the sky, and it's getting bigger and bigger. And you know what? It's not a cloud. It's something alive. All of a sudden, from every direction, massive flocks of birds start swarming in, and they all converge right over Abraha's army. The sky literally starts to darken as thousands upon thousands of these birds circle above the soldiers. They've totally forgotten about the elephant at this point. They're just staring up at this unbelievable sight. And then, something impossible happens. These birds, they're small, like swallows, but they're armed. Each one is carrying 3 tiny pebbles of what's described as baked clay, one in its beak and one in each claw. And as they hover over the army, they start to let them go. A single cry cuts through all that confusion. "Mother, woe is me!" A soldier's been hit, and then there's another cry, and another. Absolute chaos erupts. These tiny little pebbles, dropped from the sky, are hitting the soldiers with devastating force, reportedly piercing right through their armor and their bodies. The destruction was swift, and it was total. What was, just moments before, an invincible, terrifying army was now a scene of utter chaos and death. Within minutes, the entire force of 60,000 men was decimated, their bodies left strewn all across the valley. An event like this, so sudden, so miraculous, it doesn't just get forgotten. It gets seared into the collective memory of an entire people. The aftermath would become a historical touchstone, changing the course of the whole region forever. So let's look at the final scorecard here. Abraha himself was struck. His men managed to get him away, but his body reportedly began to decay on the journey, and he died in agony before he even made it back to his palace. His army wiped out. The accounts describe their remains as being like chewed up straw, and the Kaaba, not a single scratch on it. Its sacred status was now elevated to a whole new level across the entire Arabian Peninsula. This event was so monumental that it literally reset the calendar for them. The year 570 CE became known as al-Fil, the year of the elephant. People would date things by saying it happened 2 years after the year of the elephant. But its importance goes even deeper, because it was in this very same year that a child was born in Mecca who would grow up to be the Prophet Muhammad. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This wasn't just some failed military campaign. It became this foundational story of divine protection, marking the very year that the Prophet of Islam was born. It just makes you wonder, right? How can one single unforgettable event, a story of faith against impossible odds, so profoundly shape the identity, the calendar, and the destiny of a people for all the generations to come?